Now, I'm going to take us to Nepal, where I've done a lot of field work, and a great deal of our research there on the ground does challenge the conventional theory. That is the Rapti Valley, for those of you who want to know where it is. You have the flat area of the Rapti Valley, you have the middle hills, and the problems with the middle hills of trying to, oh no, sorry, that doesn't have a, I thought it had an electronic thing. As you can see, those are boons, and you have to grow rice. You can't just grow rice on an open hillside like that. You've got to get all the boons in, dig them every year, in terms of making sure that what it was the year before hasn't been washed away. Immense amount of work. So having a crop that you can eat 12 months a year, crops, is a big challenge. It is important to realize that farmers have built and maintained, this is a very interesting, that's a road with a canal going under it, and two canals coming in. All of that's been done by hand. This is not with modern equipment. And I've seen canals going through hills and things of this sort, just incredible amount of work. Now, sometimes when you look at a farmer-managed irrigation systems, it's pretty primitive engineering. So in this instance, you have part of it coming down this way, you have a creek coming in, you have some coming out, and a lot of hard physical labor to get these things in good shape. Sometimes you'll have ones that don't have very much cement on the sides, but the farmers are pulling in a crop. So they don't look fancy, but there's a crop going on. Now, I took this picture 6 months after an agency-managed system was built down the Rapti Valley with a huge amount of money from the Asian Development Bank. 6 months after construction. This is all mud. So here we have this fantastic, expensive cement works, and there's no water. And they actually built it over where there were 5 farmer-managed systems earlier and destroyed the systems, and then when they did get some water, the crop level went way down. So what we're finding is that billions have been spent, and if you look at CETA and World Bank and USAID, you can see the reports of how much we've been spending, and there are some successes. But what we're finding is that those primitive farmer-managed irrigation systems are able frequently to outperform the very, very expensive, fancy, engineered new systems. We have one study that compares 225 systems in Nepal, and we did find that the farmer-managed irrigation were consistently outperforming. We found higher yields and better maintenance. So let's take a look at that. What you'll see is that we looked at overall condition, and to do that, we walked the fields, we walked the canal all the way from the head to the end, and gave it whether or not it was in excellent condition, moderately good, or poor. Well, you find that on the agency managed, almost 50% are poor, 45.8. And a very strong statistical relationship where the agency are doing much worse than the farmer. Then we looked at technical efficiency, and there what we were looking at is the capacity of getting the water all the way to the tail end. And those of you who understand waterworks, this is a big challenge to get water from a headworks all the way to the tail end. And again, we found that the farmer managed almost 90%, and well, a little bit more than 90% of them were doing highly efficient, technical efficiency, and or moderately, and in comparison to the agency. And then we looked at economic efficiency, and we there measured the benefits they were getting out of the system, adding them up, and looking at the cost of maintaining it. So we were looking at a cost-benefit analysis, And again, the farmer managed were more efficient than the agency managed. This gives us some broad data, but when you actually are talking with the farmers and trying to get how they do this and attending some of the meetings where they're talking about these sorts of things, they're frequently way up in the hills, no officials going there. They're having to talk together and bargain together, and sometimes spending 2 to 3 days, sometimes a week in March, about what they're going to do for the monsoon season coming along. And monsoon is just something, if you've not ever visited Asia at a time of a monsoon season, in a river you can see full trees going down, some beat up old cars, tires, just massive amounts. And so they damage irrigation systems, and then if you have to run it yourself, you've got to figure out how to repair it and get it all ready for the next year. So there's with all of that work, there's substantial temptation to free ride, but by organizing, developing their own rules, finding out, sharing monitoring, and trying to figure out ways that they can keep the monitoring and sanctioning costs down, they're able to have a much higher level of cooperation. Now, what we do find is that the rules that they use are quite different. We found that it is not that you always regulate quantity. They use timing a lot, and space and technology. And especially if you go into some of the other resources, you'll find space and technology even more than time. But a lot of times that you have a rotation system that goes, and I get to go first, but you come right after me. So at the time that we're supposed to change water, you're right out there watching. I'm right out there because I want to get as much as I can. And so only 2 people have to monitor, but you go next. And if he doesn't give up water at the time that you're right there. And so this is a very low-cost way of keeping a rotation system going without having to hire a guard. Sometimes they had guards, but the rules are really quite ingenious. What we're finding repeatedly in resources around the world of different types, that monitoring and keeping things straight so that I know that you're going to be able to do this right, because if you don't, someone's going to catch you. So I can trust you more than I did earlier. And getting that trust is really, really important. And we don't talk about it in our theory very much. I had a long talk with Ken Arrow a couple months ago, and he's been working on this for a long time. But you look at some of your books and look in the index and see where the word trust is and how many citations there are, or places that you can look up and find trust. So now I'm going to switch from irrigation over to forestry, because again, some of these same issues, and it gives us a way of illustrating cross-resource things. And now we're going to look at remote sensing, and we're going to look at one of the panaceas, literature after literature, saying that the way to engage and protect areas is government protection, very long, big government things where the go with the military out. And we've been asking, do government-protected areas work? What factors explain when they do and when they don't? And so we're going to go first into India, and from the air we're going to look at the Tadoba on the Tiger